John Gregory. Now, I first met Bill Hignett in the mid-1970s when he was working for the old Institute of Teachers. He was a field officer, I think, from memory, dealing with remote teachers.
Yes.
And the president of the Institute at the time was you.
Yes.
And I remember walking into a meeting and there was Bill with a twinkle in his eye, and you looked at him and you thought, now he's either up to mischief or he's about to commit mischief. And I thought this could be a very nice bloke to know, and as it proved to be the case. How did you get to know him?
Well, I got to know him over at what was called the Upper Eastern Eyre Peninsula Teachers Association, and he apologised because two of their members didn't come to the central meeting that we'd called. And I thought, well, this is unusual because we had over 60 there, and he's very conscientious in organising the members to come and get an update and make their points. The favourite topic in those days was, what is SAYET, that's the union, going to do about this? I got a bit sick of what is SAYET going to do about this, and I asked Bill what he was going to do about it. And one thing led to another, and eventually we recruited him as our field officer for everything west of a line from Port Pirie to the Northern Territory border.
Now, my memory of that is that I remember the contacts I had with Bill were few and far between because he was always out bush.
Yes.
And really hard to contact.
Yes.
That was your experience?
Yes. Well, if he knew you were looking for him for something he didn't want to know about, then he was very hard to contact. And we didn't have mobile phones, and he had a Sigma with a bull bar, and he spent a lot of time sitting in that car going from point to point.
Pre-mobile phones.
Yeah.
I can remember when I think you and I, my first trip up to the APY lands, and Bill was in the background there organising things and introductions and meeting various people. They all held him in some awe. They regarded him with a great deal of respect. What was behind that?
Well, he followed up everything. He had a keen sense of what we call social justice and fairness, and he was particularly concerned to support beginning teachers, and we had a large number of beginning teachers sent out to those remote locations, and they were so busy coping with all kinds of adjustments that they'd overlook things like claiming their allowances, getting their entitlements to leave, and all manner of things. So Bill would sit down with them, go through their paychecks, work out what they were owed, and he saved them thousands. Probably across the system, it would have cost the system millions for the work that Bill did looking at bread and butter issues like that, which brought in a lot of loyal members.
Now, aside from his support for his own members and the good work he did,
yeah,
he was always out there looking to look after people,
yeah,
make sure that they were being treated with fairly. But as a side hustle, in a way, he was involved with the Vietnam veterans.
Yes.
Now, when I first met Bill, I didn't realise he'd been in Vietnam, but he had one of the transport units, I believe. Now, somehow or another, over that period of time, he's passed the baton on to you through MASA, which is the Military Advocates of South Australia organisation.
Yeah.
Can you talk me through that? What's that organisation and how did that arise through Bill?
Bill did have a side hustle, which was to support vets wherever he found them. And as part of that, eventually he became president of Plympton RSL, and they had advocates based there. At the same time, this is about 2014 through 2017, RSL SA went through a period of economic stringency, shall we say, and they couldn't keep the number of advocates that they had. So there was a vacuum. And with Bill's leadership, Plympton RSL filled the gap and built up the number of advocates. So it drew people in from other organisations as well. It brought in people from the Vietnam Vets Federation, brought in people from the Military Brotherhood. It brought in several unattached, shall we say, advocates. And he got such a collection that it became known as the Plympton Veterans Centre. and it outgrew the spaces that it held in that location. It also, its reputation grew, and it became the major go-to for advocacy and support services. So the Department of Veterans Affairs and the South Australian Local Health Network identified their contribution and invited them to become an anchor tenant at the Door Park Rehab Centre, and they were one of the pioneers in establishing the Repat Wellbeing Centre that's there now.
What was Bill's secret? How was he able to gather together these disparate groups, even though they had the commonality of the vets, but they weren't necessarily groups that were close to each other until Bill came along and somehow sprinkled his special sauce over them, and they all became unified behind his concept. What was the special thing he had?
Well, Bill was the quintessential networker, and he had contacts everywhere, and he followed through, and he always saw things through to a conclusion, and he did it fairly and with a great sense of judgment. So he gained a reputation for that kind of wisdom, and that's what brought people in as loyal contributors to the common cause of supporting vets and their families.
So we've got the organisation MASA,
yeah,
a new organisation in a sense, but it has arisen out of the old. Under its new format, what is its purpose and what good does it expect to do?
Well, it acts as a go-to for people who are concerned about veterans' welfare or their families and their friends. And if people have got any concerns, they know they can contact this centre and get the support that they need. Some of that support is delivered by way of advocacy, either wellbeing or compensation, and some of that support is delivered by welfare counselling and referral to other organisations. Some people who find themselves in terrible circumstances, like domestic violence, post-traumatic stress disorder. Some people are facing prison sentences or are being released from prison. We have all sorts of of things to deal with, and they know with confidence that they'll get support, care, and concern. We have the children of vets whose education's been disrupted by movement around the country, and they can get support. They've got entitlements under the various Defence Act provisions, and the encyclopedic knowledge that we can marshal through the Plympton Veterans Centre, now Military Advocates SA, is hugely valuable to all those people.
So vets, we call them clients for this purpose.
Yeah.
How many have you got on the books?
Well, we've got about 2,500, and we add more every day. It's a huge workload, and our advocates are extremely busy people. They're all volunteers, with the exception of 1.8 admin officer. They all give their time willingly. They're very well qualified in what they do. They have to meet a whole range of different criteria and standards to participate as advocates, and they do that in their own time.
Now, the issues facing vets are gender neutral. There must be circumstances where female vets would need assistance, will come to MASA.
Yep.
Are there female advocates who can represent on their behalf?
Yes, we've got two very good female advocates amongst our establishment, and we're also working on building in what we call field support officers. Yep. We must also understand that we're not the only player in this space, and it's a patchwork quilt of providers, and there are other providers who we can engage with to provide support as well. And for example, Open Arms has people who specialise in the area, and some very, very competent and experienced senior female contributors.
Final question. What's the question I haven't asked you that we should know about?
One might be, how come I got involved in a veterans organisation? And the answer is I got involved because Bill asked me, but I've also got a background as a veteran. And it's not something that I put up on a flag, because it's pretty basic. It's a couple of years as a reservist with the Citizens Military Force, which is commonly referred to as Saturday Soldier or cut lunch cowboys. But as a very experienced veteran told me once when I was explaining how little I'd contributed to the defence of Australia, he said, "You still served." And that's what's important. And a veteran is somebody who has 1 day's service or more. And they're the people that we support, because you wouldn't believe it, but there are veterans who've stepped off the recruit bus and busted their knees and so received an injury that's influenced them for the rest of their life.
Good way to finish it.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.